Are you through? No, I'm doing society a favor. So? That's another one right now. I've got you for the rest of your natural-born life if you don't watch your step. You want another one? Yes. You got it. You got another one right there. That's another one, pal.
Cut it out!
Back in 1985, a movie about 5 students sentenced to spend all day in the library on a Saturday looked like an ordinary teen entertainment product when it hit theaters. But the truth behind it was far more chaotic and surprising. The Breakfast Club tells the story of one Saturday morning, one room, and 5 students who have nothing in common except the hard wooden chair beneath them. A princess, a delinquent, an athlete, a genius, and a weirdo. But what most audiences never realized was how chaotic and tense everything behind the scenes really was. Director John Hughes had a budget of only $1 million and a cast in which none of them were major stars yet. Molly Ringwald, the girl Hughes wrote 16 Candles specifically to create a role for. Judd Nelson, the man who was nearly fired before the movie was even finished. Emilio Estevez, who was originally chosen for a completely different role. Anthony Michael Hall, who literally grew taller halfway through filming. And Ali Sheedy, who found the David Bowie quote that opens the movie and handed it to Hughes without saying a word. From improvised scenes that became the heart of the film, to a song the band didn't want to sing, to a gym turned into a library that no one noticed. This movie has secrets that, even after 4 decades, many people still don't know. Today, let's count down 15 strange facts about The Breakfast Club. And stay until number 1 because it involves an article written 33 years after the film was released, a question no one dared ask Hughes while he was alive, and the reason this film's legacy is far more complicated than a fist pump over Simple Minds music. Hit like, subscribe, and if you still remember which of those 5 characters you belong to, let's begin. Number 15. Hughes wrote the script in 2 days. Let's start before there was anything. Before the library, before the cast, before the iconic fist pump. On July 4 and 5, 1982, the 2 Independence Day holiday dates, John Hughes sat down and wrote the entire script for The Breakfast Club. Not an outline, not a rough draft, a complete screenplay. In 2 days, Hughes was fast in an almost unbelievable way. His habit was to enter 20-hour bursts, no sleep, no stopping until the script was done. Ferris Bueller's Day Off was written in 4 days, and people already considered that fast. The Breakfast Club took only half that time. But that speed didn't mean the idea was rushed. Hughes had been carrying the concept for a long time. 5 students with 5 completely different archetypes, locked in one room, forced to see each other as human beings instead of labels. That idea had already lived in his head. Once he sat down to write, it just had to pour out. The problem was that in 1982, Hughes didn't yet have enough credibility to convince a studio to make a movie with almost no action, no sex, and set in a single room. The studio wanted proof he could make films first. So he completed 16 Candles first, proving himself, building his name, then returning to the script he had written during the 1982 holiday weekend. The result? A film written in 2 days in 1982 was released in 1985 and became one of the most quoted, studied, and taught teen films in American cinema history. It was preserved by the Library of Congress for its cultural significance. It was ranked number 1 on Entertainment Weekly's list of the 50 greatest high school movies of all time. It all began with 2 Independence Day vacation days and a man who refused to sleep. Number 14. The library was actually a gym. Most of the movie takes place in a single room, Shermer High School's library, with towering bookshelves, long study tables, warm golden light, and the feeling of a place that truly existed somewhere out there. If you grew up watching The Breakfast Club, you can probably picture that room more clearly than your own school library. The truth is, that room never existed. Maine North High School, where the entire movie was filmed, had no library large enough to hold cameras, crew, and 5 actors at the same time in the way Hughes needed. The solution from the production design team. Take the school gym and transform it into a library from top to bottom. Bookshelves were built. Study tables were placed inside. The lighting was redesigned from scratch to create the warm, enclosed feeling of a reading space rather than the emptiness of a gym floor. Everything you see in that room, from the tall shelves to the upper windows, was a constructed set. The practical consequence of that decision, the Chicago Blitz football team, which was using that school gym as a practice facility, could not enter the court during the entire filming period from March to May 1984. A professional football team had to give up its practice field for 5 kids doing detention. It doesn't seem fair, but that is how Shermer High's library was born. The Breakfast Club is the most famous movie about being trapped in one room, about the feeling of being trapped and unable to escape. Number 13. Nicolas Cage almost played Bender. The story begins with Emilio Estevez, who was originally cast as John Bender, the delinquent from an abusive family, the one who mocks everyone while hiding real pain underneath. Estevez accepted the role, prepared for the character, and everything was moving forward. Then Hughes had a problem with the role of Andrew, the athlete, whom he needed an actor with the right build and physical energy for. Hughes looked at Estevez and saw the answer. He convinced Estevez to switch to Andrew. Estevez agreed. The role of Bender suddenly became vacant. Hughes then considered Nicolas Cage, who was in the early phase of his career but had already started building a name. Cage fit the energy, fit the look. The problem was the budget. All of the Breakfast Club had only $1 million to be made from start to finish. The salary Cage could ask for even at that stage of his career exceeded what the project could afford. Cage was eliminated for financial reasons, not talent. Then came John Cusack, who auditioned multiple times, even traveling back and forth between Chicago and Los Angeles to test for the role. Cusack was smart, deep, and fit many sides of the character, but Hughes felt he wasn't tough enough. He lacked the dangerous edge Bender needed to look threatening before looking vulnerable. Judd Nelson was ultimately chosen. And then, as we'll discuss at number 12, was nearly fired during filming. Think about that for a second. Cage was rejected for money, Cusack was rejected for not being tough enough, and Nelson was nearly fired for being too tough. The Breakfast Club was losing its central character from multiple directions at once, and somehow it still got made. Number 12. Judd Nelson was nearly fired for method acting. Nelson got the role of Bender and decided to approach the character through method acting. Not just on set, but in real life. Bender is a bully, a person from an abusive family, someone who uses aggression to hide everything inside. Nelson didn't turn that character off when the cameras stopped. He continued, between takes, during breaks, in those moments when the cast should have simply been themselves. And Bender bullied Molly Ringwald, off camera as a human being, not a character. Ringwald later recalled she had never seen John Hughes that angry. Hughes was extremely protective of Ringwald. She was his muse, the actress he had written 16 Candles specifically to create a role for. Seeing Nelson treat her that way, whether for the art or not, crossed a line Hughes would not accept. He was ready to fire Nelson, and this is when the entire cast had to act. Estevez, Hall, Sheedy, they came together and begged Hughes not to make that decision. Not because they thought Nelson was right, but because they had seen what Nelson was doing on set, the intensity, the depth he brought to the character, and they knew firing him halfway through would be a disaster for the film. The person who convinced Hughes in the end was Paul Gleason, the actor who played Principal Vernon, the film's antagonist. Gleason told Hughes directly, Nelson was a talented actor, this was how he worked, and the results on screen would prove it. Hughes listened. Nelson stayed. A twist worth mentioning. In the same year, 1985, Eric Stoltz was fired from Back to the Future for the exact same reason, staying in character off camera and creating tension on set. Stoltz lost the role. Nelson kept his. The only difference was that Nelson had coworkers willing to defend him. Sometimes your career depends on whether the person sitting next to you is willing to speak up. Number 11. Nelson pretended to be a real student to prepare for the role. While most actors prepare by reading the script and researching the character, Judd Nelson chose another way. He went to a high school near where the production was, based in suburban Chicago, walked in and began convincing students he was one of them. Nelson was 24 years old at the time. Bender in the movie is portrayed as around 17. That was a 7-year gap. Nelson somehow narrowed enough that no one questioned it. At least not immediately. He blended in, listened to how students talked, observed how they treated one another, and absorbed the energy of a real school with real students. Then he bought them beer, using AFID. Not because he needed beer, but because it was the fastest way to be accepted into the group, to become one of them instead of an outsider observing from a distance. When students asked why he lived at the Westin hotels and resorts instead of at home like everyone else, Nelson didn't miss the opportunity. He looked them straight in the eye and said, "My father is in prison." That story was not random. Bender in the movie comes from an abusive family. His father is a violent, emotionally absent man. The source of all the wounds Bender hides behind aggression. Nelson brought the character's situation into his real-life words, testing how it felt to say it, testing how students would react. And here is the most perfect twist of this entire story. In the movie, while the students are talking, Brian reveals he has a fake ID, and the reason he gives is to vote. That line was improvised by Anthony Michael Hall and was not in the script. The most well-behaved student in the movie has a fake ID for the most innocent reason imaginable. The actor playing the most dangerous student in the movie used a fake ID to buy beer for real students. Same prop. Two completely different worlds. Number 10. Vernon's punch was real, and Nelson was genuinely scared. In one confrontation scene between Bender and Vernon, Vernon suddenly throws a fist toward Bender, and Bender recoils, flinches by reflex, ducking his head like someone used to being hit. It is one of the deepest psychological moments in the entire film. No dialogue, no explanation, just one physical reaction expressing everything the script spent pages describing about Bender's background. Audiences see that flinch and immediately understand. This is someone who has been hit so many times that the body reacts before the brain can process it. The truth is, Judd Nelson genuinely thought Gleason was about to hit him. Gleason gave no warning that he would throw the punch in that scene. There was no rehearsal for that specific moment. Gleason threw the punch fast enough and close enough that Nelson, even while acting, had no time to distinguish between real and fake. The recoil you see on screen is the real reflex of a 24-year-old man honestly preparing to block a punch. It wasn't Bender reacting to memories of his father, it was Nelson reacting to Gleason's fist flying toward his face. Hughes saw that on screen and kept it immediately. No extra take, no discussion, because what he saw could not be recreated through intentional acting. It was something that could happen only once, in a moment no one could plan. The Breakfast Club, a film built around the idea that everyone hides their true psychology, and the most authentic psychological moment in the entire movie was the moment an actor wasn't hiding anything at all. Number 9. Anthony Michael Hall grew taller halfway through filming. One of the most unusual production decisions of The Breakfast Club was filming in chronological order, from the first scene to the last, in the exact order of the story. This is rare in cinema, where scenes are usually rearranged to optimize locations and schedules. Hughes wanted the cast to truly experience the emotional journey in sequence, so the chemistry between the characters would naturally develop on set the same way it develops in the film. It was the right artistic decision, and it created a consequence no one on the crew expected. Anthony Michael Hall was 16 at the time, the exact teenage age, the exact stage when the body can do things completely outside anyone's control. Halfway through filming, Hall had a sudden growth spurt. Not growing metaphorically, growing literally, real measurable height increase while cameras were still rolling and the story was still taking place on the same Saturday. Judd Nelson, who observed this from beginning to end, later said Hall was shorter than him during the first weeks of shooting. By the final weeks, Hall was taller than him. Not a tiny difference. Enough that the crew had to sit down and figure out how to shoot around the change, adjusting camera angles, choosing how to place characters in the frame, avoiding scenes that directly compared Hall's height with the other actors, so they would not break the continuity of a film that was supposed to happen over only a few hours. Number 8. Rick Moranis was fired for wanting to play a Russian. In The Breakfast Club, there is one character most audiences don't pay enough attention to. Carl, the school janitor. He doesn't have many scenes. He doesn't have a huge emotional arc. But in the moments he appears, Carl brings something important. The perspective of a man who has watched hundreds of generations of students pass through these hallways, picked up every kind of secret from under the floors and inside the lockers, and knows that all the drama happening in the library today will fade away like everything else. Carl is the quietest and wisest character in the movie, and he was not the person Hughes originally wanted to use. The role of Carl was first given to Rick Moranis, who later became a star with Ghostbusters, Spaceballs, and Little Shop of Horrors. Moranis accepted the role, read the script, and began building the character in his own direction. That direction was a Russian immigrant, Russian mannerisms, the entire color of the character placed in the context of someone from elsewhere, observing American culture from an outsider's point of view. Moranis thought it was an interesting and funny choice. John Hughes thought it was completely wrong. Carl, in Hughes's vision, was not a comic character with a foreign accent for the audience to laugh at. Carl was an ordinary American and ordinary working man, whose normalcy created a counterweight to all the teenage drama happening around him. The two sides could not find common ground. Moranis was fired. The role was given to John Capellos, who played Carl exactly the way Hughes wanted, tired, wise, and calm in the face of everything. A man who had seen too much to still be impressed by anyone. Moranis continued his career and became one of the most beloved comedy actors of the 1980s. Number 7. The secret sharing scene was not in the script. If you ask anyone who has seen The Breakfast Club what scene they remember most, the scene that truly made them feel something, the answer is almost always the same. The 5 students sitting in a circle on the library floor, silent for a moment, then beginning to talk. Really talk. Not sharp lines or arguments about social status, but real stories. Why they are here. What really happened. Things they have never told anyone. Claire admits the emptiness behind her perfection. Andrew talks about pressure from his father. Allison says dark and strange things only she understands. Bender finally reveals what he had hidden all day, and Brian says he has a fake ID to vote. That is the heart scene of the entire film. The thing that made The Breakfast Club not just an ordinary teen movie, but a movie people watched and felt seen by. And Hughes did not write a single word of that scene. He told the cast before filming, improvise. Each person had to create their own character's story, decide what they would say and how they would say it, and bring it into the scene without a script to lean on. Brian's fake ID detail, to vote, was completely invented by Anthony Michael Hall during filming. He searched for something that was both true to the character and funny in the way only Brian could be funny, and that line was born. Hughes heard it, liked it, and kept it. That entire scene, the thing millions of people watched and felt Hughes completely understood them through, was something Hughes did not write. He simply created the space for it to happen, and that may have been the greatest directing decision of the entire film. Number 6. The ending fist pump was not planned. If you close your eyes and think of The Breakfast Club, what is the first image that appears in your mind? For most people, the answer is the same. Bender alone crossing the snowy school field, stopping, turning around, and raising his fist into the sky while the music of Simple Minds rises. Freeze frame. End of movie. It is one of the most iconic endings in 1980s film history. Recreated in dozens of other movies and television shows. Parodied, printed on posters, used to represent an entire generation and an entire era. And it was not in the script. Hughes knew he wanted to end with Bender alone, crossing the school grounds, leaving after a day that changed everything. But specifically what Bender would do in that moment, Hughes did not have a definite answer. So on the day they filmed the ending, after they had already done the scripted takes, Hughes turned to Judd Nelson and essentially said, "Try a few different things, see if anything works." Nelson walked, stopped, and raised his fist into the air, without overthinking it, without calculation. Just a natural gesture that appeared in that moment. Something Bender, after everything that happened that day, might do when no one was looking anymore. The entire crew saw it on the monitor and knew immediately. Hughes didn't need another take. That was the ending. That fist pump later became shorthand for an entire generation, a symbol of growing up, of small and private victory, of the moment you realize you got through something you thought you couldn't. And it was created in a few seconds by an actor improvising after being asked to try something different. Sometimes the symbol of an entire decade only needs one moment and one fist. Number 5. Simple Minds rejected their own movie song. The song that opens and closes The Breakfast Club, those first notes that play before David Bowie appears on screen, then return when Bender raises his fist into the air, is one of the songs most tied to the 1980s. You cannot hear the first 5 seconds without seeing that library, seeing those 5 faces, feeling something from deep in memory, and no one wanted to sing it. Don't you? Forget About Me Kiss was written by songwriter Keith Forsey and guitarist Steve Schiff, people making music for films, not performing artists. Forsey had the song, had the movie, and needed a voice. His first choice was Brian Ferry of Roxy Music. Ferry heard the demo, knew immediately it was a hit, and refused because he was busy recording the album Boys and Girls. He later admitted openly, the timing was wrong and he regretted it. Forsey kept searching. Billy Idol was considered. Corey Hart, who had just hit with the Sunglasses at Night, was suggested by A&M Records. Cy Curnin of The Fix was also on the list. No one committed. Then came Simple Minds. The band's manager, Bruce Findlay, believed the song would be a huge success in America. The band rejected it immediately. Jim Kerr, the lead singer, said directly, they only sang their own music, and he did not care about American high school students. Guitarist Charlie Burchill said they had delusions of being super cool, and the song did not fit that image. Forsey arranged a private screening of the film to convince them. Simple Minds watched the movie and still refused. In the end, manager Findlay was the one who forced the band to agree. He believed in the song more than the people who would sing it. Simple Minds reluctantly entered the studio, recorded it in one day, and walked out. The song reached number 1 in the United States and Canada. It became the biggest hit of their career. The band that said they did not care about American students created the song American Students, and the whole world still sing 4 decades later. Number 4. Universal Pictures cut 53 minutes and destroyed the original version. The Breakfast Club the world knows is 97 minutes long. That is not the version Hughes wanted released. His original cut was around 2.5 hours long, nearly double what audiences eventually saw. It contained extended scenes, moments between characters that never appeared on screen, additional layers to the story Hughes believed were necessary. Universal disagreed. The studio looked at the movie, a teen film with a $1 million budget, no action, no sex, taking place almost entirely in one room, and running 2.5 hours, and did not believe it would sell tickets. They demanded cuts. Hughes cut it. The film was reduced to 97 minutes. And here is the irreversible part. Universal did not simply store the deleted scenes in an archive for future restoration. They destroyed the negatives of those scenes. That footage no longer existed anywhere in the studio system. Hughes said in an interview with Premiere that he was the only person who still had the full version, that he possessed copies of the deleted scenes. But Hughes died in 2009, and that complete version has never been publicly released. In 2018, Criterion Collection released a special edition with around 50 minutes of never-before-seen footage, including a scene between Claire and Allison in the restroom that many consider one of the best scenes not in the original cut. But those 50 minutes still are not everything that was removed. There are still things we do not know ever existed. Universal did not believe the movie would succeed, so they cut it and destroyed what they cut. That movie grossed $51 million on a $1 million budget. Number 3. Hughes appears in the movie as Brian's father. In the final scene, after a long day in the library, the students are picked up one by one. Cars arrive, doors open, familiar faces step out. The parents of each child, the people the entire film had indirectly described as the source of every wound and every pressure. Among those faces is one man most audiences glance past without realizing it. The man who comes to pick up Brian, the brain, the character who spent all day worrying about grades and never being good enough, is John Hughes himself. This was not a promoted cameo. No announcement, no hint. Hughes appears, picks up his son, and disappears in seconds. If you did not know what he looked like, you would never notice. But it was him, the director of the movie, the man who wrote the screenplay in 2 days, the creator of all 5 of these characters, standing there as the father coming to take the genius son home. And there is another detail few people know. The woman playing Brian's mother in that scene was Anthony Michael Hall's real mother in real life. Hughes did not cast an actress for the role. He called her and asked if she wanted to appear. She agreed. So in the final scene, when Brian is picked up by his parents, the father is played by the man who created the character, and the mother is played by the woman who gave birth to the actor playing that character. The Breakfast Club is about children not understood by their parents, about the distance between what parents think their children are and what they are truly experiencing. Hughes wrote that, directed that, then stepped into it and played the father? Number 2, there was no sequel because Hughes hated Nelson. When The Breakfast Club was released and became a cultural phenomenon, Hughes had a much bigger plan than a single movie. He imagined this as the start of a long-running and ambitious franchise in a way 1980s Hollywood had never truly attempted, following those exact 5 characters across many decades of real life. Part 2 would happen when they entered college, the same people in a new environment with new pressures. Part 3 when they graduated and entered the adult world. Continuing every 10 years, each time checking who they had become, whether the connections formed on that Saturday still existed. It was a genuinely beautiful idea, and it never happened. The first and most direct reason. Hughes declared he would never work with Judd Nelson again. After all the on-set drama, method acting, bullying Ringwald, tense confrontations, Hughes concluded he could not and did not want to go through that another time. No Nelson meant no Bender. No Bender meant no The Breakfast Club sequel. That simple. The second factor was more complicated and more painful. Molly Ringwald was in the process of escaping the teen queen image Hughes had built for her. She wanted adult roles, wanted to be seen differently, and that meant she was gradually moving away from Hughes's orbit. The relationship between the director and the actress for whom he had written scripts specifically to create roles slowly fractured during the late 1980s. They never worked together again. Hughes died in 2009 without any part of that franchise plan being made. Those 5 students met only once on screen, on one Saturday, in a fake library built from a gym, and the rest of their lives, everything Hughes wanted to tell, exists only in the imagination of the people who loved that film. Number 1, Molly Ringwald wrote a shocking article 33 years later. In 2018, 33 years after The Breakfast Club was released, Molly Ringwald sat down and wrote a long essay in The New Yorker. Not a sweet memoir about golden days, not praise for Hughes's legacy. It was an article about rewatching The Breakfast Club with her 10-year-old daughter, and having to stop to explain a scene she did not know how to explain. That scene. Claire is sitting on the floor, and under the desk, Bender crawls between her legs. The scene was played for laughs. In 1985, audiences laughed. In 2018, Ringwald sat beside her daughter and looked at it through the eyes of a mother and did not know what to say. The article revealed things never publicly spoken before. That during filming, Ringwald had asked Hughes to cut another scene, one where Vernon finds a hole in the wall looking directly into the girls' locker room and spies on a teacher swimming nude. Ringwald objected. Hughes listened and rewrote a replacement scene. The actress cast as that teacher, whom Ringwald admitted she felt guilty about costing the opportunity, never appeared on screen. But the most direct thing Ringwald wrote was this. She did not see a problem with everything at the time. She was 16 years old, living inside Hughes's world, and many things only became clear when she looked back later. The article was not an attack on Hughes. Ringwald did not write like someone trying to destroy anyone. She wrote with the fairness and complexity of someone who loved a person and could still look directly at what they had done wrong. Hughes died in 2009, no longer here to respond, explain, or agree. That is the saddest part. The Breakfast Club was preserved by the Library of Congress for its cultural, historical, and aesthetic significance. It was ranked number 1 by Entertainment Weekly on the list of greatest school movies of all time. And it is also the film whose own lead actress had to sit down and explain to her daughter why some moments in it no longer feel okay. That is not a contradiction. That is the true legacy of a great film, something that survives long enough for the world to change around it, and remains important enough that people keep talking about it, even when the conversation becomes difficult. And those were 15 strange facts about The Breakfast Club, from a screenplay written during 2 Independence Day holiday dates, to a gym turned into a library while a professional football team had to surrender the court, to Nicolas Cage almost being Bender if not for budget issues, to the song the band itself did not want to sing, and an article written 33 years later questioning things an entire generation once considered normal. The Breakfast Club is not a perfect film. It was made by imperfect people, in chaotic conditions, with decisions not all of them were right. And that is exactly why it has lasted 4 decades. Because it is about imperfect people trying to understand one another in a room they do not want to be in. If you like this video, hit like and subscribe so you do not miss the next discoveries.